This is Supraland, a first-person Metroidvania puzzle-y thingy that cites games like Zelda, Metroid, and Portal as major influences, and you can actually tell pretty much where all of those influences lie within the game. Those comparisons are definitely apt. In fact, it feels very much like Metroid Prime, but with toys, and a little bit of like the sort of Portal puzzles and stuff. It's really pretty interesting. The whole theme of the game is that you're basically a bunch of toys. You are in, well, a lot of people would call an open world a sandbox. In this case, it's a lot more literal than usual because you're basically in a kid's backyard in a sort of toy sandbox thing that he has set up, and you are taking the part of a red toy creature sort of thingy that has to go around and solve the problems of the red village and sort of uncover the secrets of the world between the red and the blue people and what's actually going on here. The game has a lot of puzzles, a lot of exploration, and a little bit of combat mixed in there too, and in fact, the other influences that are cited by the developer in terms of the combat are games like Unreal and Quake, which seems like kind of a funny mixture when it comes to like a Metroidvania puzzle game, but those comparisons are pretty obvious too, with the combat feeling very, well, Unreal-like, honestly, and your weapon even has the Unreal Shock combo where you can fire a projectile and then shoot a beam into the middle of it to make it explode if you time it right and do a bunch of damage to everything around you. It's, the influences are very clear. But despite the combat being good enough and pretty satisfying when it comes to getting your various upgrades later, like that shot combo I was talking about, the main meat of the game is not in the combat, it is in the puzzles and exploration, and there's a lot to explore here. It very much just sort of trusts that you know what you're doing. It doesn't guide you by the hand. It gives you a pretty large world and just says, here's in general what you have to do, go for it, and you're sort of allowed to explore all around the place. And that's where the Metroid Prime and just in general Metroidvania comparisons come in, because the world is very large, but you have a lot of different things that you'll be obtaining along the way that allow you to access different parts in various areas that you wouldn't have normally been able to get to. Although, one thing that I gotta say right off the bat that's really cool is the upgrades that allow you to access these new areas are very inventive. They're not really your standard like Metroidvania upgrades. You would expect things like a double jump, for instance, but you actually get the double jump and in fact a triple jump almost at the very beginning of the game. Those are not like major upgrades, they're just things that you purchase very quickly and have for the rest of the game. The actual main upgrades that allow you to access new areas are a little bit more creative than that, which is pretty cool. You have one that you just saw there, the Force Cube, that glowing purple cube that allows you to weigh down switches, light up dark areas. You can even get other upgrades for it later that allow you to tether stuff to it. It's very much like a modular upgrade system the game has, where certain upgrades that you get early in the game will often be able to be upgraded themselves later on to sort of match with later abilities that you get to complicate things a little bit, but in a fun way. You also get stuff like a gun, as you saw, the red gun that fires just general red projectiles, and the color does matter because there are various switches that have to be shot with different colors, and you can actually find ways later on to color your projectiles to do various things like that. You also get a sort of grapple that allows you to both grapple to faraway areas and actually tether two separate things together so that you can actually pull them towards each other, almost like Just Cause style, or create bridges for yourself, which is pretty cool. And that involves some other fancy puzzle solving later on, like allowing it to conduct electricity or allowing you to create like little purple bridges to shoot stuff through to color your projectiles purple, stuff like that. So there's, like I said, pretty much every upgrade is very modular and has multiple uses depending on how you combine it with your other skills and items. And you also get one that I particularly liked, which is a sort of belt buckle, you could say, that allows you to magnetize to objects. So anything that is metal, you can stick to or stick to you, depending on which one is heavier. If you have small holdable objects that are metal, you can actually drag them along with you, which is required in some puzzles, especially when it comes to hitting switches behind glass and the like. Or if it's a more static, large object like a big saw in the ground or a big girder or something like that that doesn't move, you can actually float around it by magnetizing yourself to it and allowing you to sort of levitate around the world around it, which is pretty sweet and allows for some really interesting puzzle solving to be had because of the sort of overall open nature of being able to levitate around and what it allows you to do. So that's pretty cool. And later on in the game, you also get a couple of other things, but I don't want to necessarily show you every single thing because some of the stuff is really neat. But one in particular that you do get later is a green gun that is a translocator, in which case the Unreal comparisons come back again very strong for that one. It's exactly what you would think. It fires a projectile that allows you to teleport to it, so you can fire it through small spaces or extend your jumps by firing it higher than you could normally jump and then teleporting to it. And some of the optional puzzles later in the game get pretty tricky with stuff like having to grapple across multiple points without touching the ground and translocate to various high ledges and stuff like that. And that brings us to the exploration, which is really the main meat of the game and also its most satisfying aspect. Most often you'll come to a new area and you'll see all sorts of ledges and coins floating around and various puzzly bits and stuff just scattered all over the place. And the cool part about the game really is that you'll see these areas and think, I wonder if I can get up there. Basically the entire game has that I wonder if I can get there syndrome with all sorts of far off ledges and secrets and stuff. And the answer, more often than not, is not only can you get up there, but there will actually be something waiting for you when you do. The developer has been very, very good at actually predicting what players will want to do and being able to reward you with these weird far off places having actual chests and upgrades and stuff in them, which is really sweet because you'll think that you're sort of breaking the game. You'll think that you're doing some sort of weird physics interaction or something that they would never have thought of that allows you to get to some sort of crazy place that you're not even sure you're supposed to get to. But when you finally do get up there, you'll find that there is in fact a chest or some sort of secret or collectible waiting for you because they actually did think of that, and that's really cool. I know games like Super Mario Odyssey have been lauded for this whole idea that just creatively combining all of your abilities and equipment to get to far off, strange locations that you're not even sure you're supposed to get to is rewarded by actually having stuff there for you to find, rather than just being a bragging rights, I made it to this ledge, do you know how to do it, kind of thing. And the game does that really, really well, and that's actually probably my favorite aspect of it, is just how much forethought there is in the game. And when it comes to large, sort of sandboxy, especially Metroidvania open worlds like this, it's really nice to see player choice being such a heavy factor in just allowing you to explore however you feel that you can and just sort of combining all of your stuff to get to random places. But it's even more impressive, in my opinion, when there's so much forethought put in that allows you to actually find rewards when you do it. You know, it's nice to see the creativity and inventiveness of players to use all this gear to get to various far-off places, actually matched by the creativity and inventiveness of the developer designing the levels in such a way to reward you for finding these places. So there's a good amount of, I wonder if I can get up there, and then when you finally do, there's a chest or an upgrade or some sort of optional objective that you can find there that really rewards you for just messing around. And that's kind of the essence of a good sandbox, in my opinion, is having not only a lot of stuff to see, but a lot of places to get to and stuff that you can do that will actually reward you for doing it, because the developers thought of that, and you can, in fact, mess with the physics and stuff and combine all of your various tools to get to weird places and find that you were actually supposed to do that, or at least you could do that, and there is something waiting for you there. That's just endlessly fascinating to me when I find like all these far off ledges and stuff, and it turns out that there's actually like a chest waiting there for me, because you can tell when a world is designed in that way that the developer had fun actually designing the world. You can tell when there's a lot of passion in the world design and the overall level design and the puzzles and the exploration, because it's just fun to explore, and you can tell that they had fun designing it because of all the weird creativeness that's around the place. You can tell that they sort of just experimented on their own to see what you could and could not do, and then made sure that all the stuff that was possible has some sort of reward at the end. And that's just a hallmark to me of really passionate level design. When you have all these various rewards strewn about the place for you to find, it says that the developer knew exactly what they were doing and what they wanted to do, and set out to actually make a very satisfying world to explore that they obviously had a lot of enjoyment in creating, because they wanted to be just as creative as the players hopefully will be in exploring it. There is a story here as well as lots of little side activities for you to find. The story is actually not bad. You don't necessarily expect, like a silly-looking puzzle game to have like a super involved story, but the story here is actually pretty interesting, with the red and blue characters as well as the other mysterious entities I will not mention that have a lot to say, and the dialogue is actually really well written and pretty funny. The world itself just has a lot of personality. And in fact, that is another aspect that you can say where the developer clearly had fun designing the world, because you can see a lot of things where the kid has used specific like objects that you would just have around the house to help create the world. And you can tell that the developer was just sort of thinking, like, if I was a kid, if I was making this in my backyard, what would I have used? So you have like fences made of pencils and giant saw blades as bridges and stuff like that, and big levels and stuff in the world. All this little creative stuff that you can tell the developer had a lot of thought when it came to, what would a kid take from their garage to make this in their backyard, and there's stuff like that everywhere. So yeah, the game definitely oozes personality when it comes to it being like a kid's playset, basically, that they've just sort of magicked up in their backyard with random household stuff. And the story very much feels like it fits in with all that, with these sort of characters trying to explain the child that has created them as like their deity kind of, and going through the world with like the invisible walls and stuff are actually mentioned by people. And in fact, there are achievements for finding them and stuff like that. So yeah, the interconnectedness of the world and the various villages and the people all comes into play with the story and how the whole thing will eventually play out to become this big sort of revealing moment when it comes to, you know, what is actually causing the problems and what is the truth behind these various villages and your character and all that. It's cute. It's a very cute game, but it's definitely not like a game for kids per se. Like, you know, you see the very cute theme and the very pretty colorful graphics and things, and you think that it's perhaps like a kid-friendly game, and I guess it is kid-friendly for sure, but it is not a game for kids. The puzzles are challenging, and there are a lot of like brain benders later in the game, especially when it comes to the optional puzzles to get the extra upgrades and stuff. Some of that stuff is actually very difficult to figure out. It definitely has that later level Portal feel that sort of bends your brain a bit and makes you be very creative with all the stuff that you have. And there are also lots of other, you know, like pop culture references and little jokes and stuff that adults would get more than kids. You know, you can find everything from like Link from Legend of Zelda to Walter from Breaking Bad cooking meth in a shack if you want to, which is funny. You know, this game is definitely one that understands that references are not necessarily funny on their own just for being references, but need some sort of personality to them, and the overall personality to the game adds to those references and makes them cute, for sure. So overall, it's just a very rewarding Metroidvania experience, and if you enjoy puzzle games, you should absolutely try this. This is definitely one that should be in your Steam library if you at all like Metroidvanias, if you like puzzle games, if you like first-person exploration, because it just does everything that it sets out to do so well and with so much personality and with so much color. It's just a really solid game, and it's only $20, which is kind of a steal, in my opinion, because of the amount of content on offer. You're talking about like 20 to 25 hours probably to actually beat the game, especially when it comes to doing some of the optional stuff like the big tower defense encounter and some other stuff I'm not going to mention. And there's just a lot to find and enjoy here. It's clearly been made by someone that cares a lot about what they wanted to make, that has a very specific vision in mind, and that just had a ton of fun making it. And I would always recommend supporting developers like that, because that's just impressive in its own right for a small team. I think it's mostly one guy actually that did this, which is just really impressive in and of itself. And it's overall just an extremely solid first-person puzzle game with really rewarding exploration. Some of the most fun exploration I think I've had in a long time in like a puzzle game like this, or really just about any first-person game that involves a lot of exploration. This does it so well. It clearly knows exactly what it wants to do. It's really awesome, honestly, and for $20 it's definitely a steal. Not only that, but there is actually going to be fairly soon a DLC coming out to expand the game and add some more puzzles and stuff for you to do, so that should be interesting. I don't know all the details with what the DLC is going to include, but it is on the way, so that's awesome. And who knows, maybe they'll actually be able to make a sequel at some point and take this theme even further. So yeah, that is Supraland. I cannot recommend it enough. It's just such a good example of the first-person puzzle genre and of the Metroidvania genre, just everything it sets out to do. It is very, very competent at doing, and is just really fun to play through and see what you can discover. The link to the Steam page is, as always, in the description below. Thank you very, very much for watching, and go check it out for sure. I'll see you guys next time.